Okay. Hi, I'm Matthew Daley, writer and artist of the Doug Wright Award nominated Softserve and Nosferatu, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to celebrate Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Matthew Daley as he discusses his latest graphic novel, Softserve and Nosferatu. Based in Toronto, Ontario, Matthew Daley is an award-winning illustrator and comic artist. A graduate of Sheridan College's Interpretive illustration program, Matthew works with clients to create editorial illustrations, character design for video games and animation, event posters, logo design, and advertising. In October 2019, his work was celebrated in a retrospective gallery show of his gig posters, which included work for clients such as Devo, the new Pornographers, the Residents, and the Polaris Awards. Assorted Baggage, a collection of wordless comics, was released by indie publisher Black Eye Books in 2022. Matthew's latest work is Softserve and Nosferatu. Softserve and Nosferatu is described as an absurdist day in the life of Nosferatu and an ice cream cone on the loose, experiencing a variety of events they come across, coupled with weird wackiness, backed by maximum silliness. Offering basically fun for all ages, Matthew's book was recently translated into French. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Matthew Daley, as he discusses his latest graphic novel, Softserve and Nosferatu. So, Matthew Daley, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to chat with you finally.
Well,
other than at shows, yeah.
That's right. We've met at many shows in the past, and not long conversations, mind you.
No,
so it's nice to have a longer one this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great.
Well, before I get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
The first comics sort of that I really remember reading was my mother had a copy of Fun with Peanuts. I mean, I kind of grew up with Peanuts. Like, I remember I had like bed sheets and curtains in my bedroom as a kid. So it was sort of like, I think my mom kind of grew up on that strip as well. And so that had a pretty, deep, I guess, effect. And I guess probably in terms of comic books, it was an issue of The Flash. And the only thing I can remember about it, and I can't remember the issue, and I was either like 4 or 5, I guess, at the time. And it was like, I just remember The Flash kept running so fast in it that he was melting. And that's as much as I can remember. I don't know if he was hallucinating this or it's one of these things I'd love to track down. After 45 years, it was just such a weird introduction to superhero comics.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Because I only really knew most superheroes from just watching like Super Friends and the Adam West Batman and the old Spider-Man cartoons, like more so than comics. So
sure.
That was kind of the first superhero comic I'd read. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, great inspiration growing up, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today?
I'm influenced by a lot of picture books and such, particularly a lot of European stuff. There's an illustrator named Oliver Duzy out of France whom I discovered in the late 90s. I was in a band at the time and we were touring through Quebec, and I ended up at a bookstore near the venue we played. At the time, I was starting to sort of collect children's books because I was just something about the graphics in that was really, really grabbing me. And it was sort of as I was establishing myself as an illustrator too, that I think it was giving me a lot of illustrative influence. And something about those, he had 2 books that I found in particular. And it's still sort of there are these books that kind of when I'm stuck, I'll just sort of go to them. And, even if I'm not directly finding direct inspiration or something like that, it's still something that just gives me something to kind of aspire to illustrative wise. Yeah, it's still sort of, there's very few that I kind of go back to like that. So yeah, highly recommended if you can track his stuff down. Yeah.
Very good. Well, we're here talking about your latest graphic novel, Softserve and Nosferatu. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the book. What is it all about?
It's pretty much just an absurdist night in the life of Nosferatu and an ice cream cone on the loose, and then just sort of things that they come across that they're trying to sort of just not directly get through or something like that. So it's just kind of just weird wackiness. Basically, it's inspired once again by a lot of the picture books I really like, and like cartoons like Ren and Stimpy in particular. I think is a heavy influence in that. That's just kind of that, like, there's not a deep story to it, but it's just kind of like maximum silliness and weirdness and kind of fun for all ages. If you're a weird kid to a weird adult, I think it's minimal dialogue, and even then, it's sort of like I kind of envisioned it in a way, sort of like a children's book where like the talking character is consistently just pointing out things they're seeing, and it's almost like a strange learning to read type of book, and which came in handy when I recently translated it into French for MCAF. So like someone who actually bought it there said it's like they found it was who was English kind of bought it so they could learn French off of it, which was kind of neat. So yeah.
Is it a commentary on society in any way?
Oh no, it's just like not the way I did it though. It's interesting because someone at TCAF last year, my wife overheard someone who I actually work with at the Beguiling talking to someone else. They had bought it, and they said it was like the two main characters were battling fascists, basically, which isn't how I saw it. But I guess if you have problems with landlords and transit cops and stuff like that and whatnot, you could probably see it as that. I didn't set out to make it a commentary on anything, but hey, you never know what people get out of things, which is, it's an honor in a way that something can be so open to interpretation that I just sort of see as a straightforward, ridiculous story.
Well, speaking of honors, I got to say that your book has been nominated for a Doug Wright Award, so I got to congratulate you on that. That's tremendous.
Thank you very much. Yeah, definitely very honored. Yeah, very, very stoked to see you get the recognition of a nomination. Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Have you been nominated for any awards before for your book?
For this book in particular, yeah, I did get an award for the Society of Illustrators of Los Angeles Illustration West illustration contest, which is a yearly thing. And so they have a comics category, which is strange because you just submit individual pages. You can't submit the whole project. Yeah, the sixth page won a gold in the comics and graphic novels, which was great, it was an amazing honor once again. And I just found out this morning too that some of the stuff got shortlisted for the World Illustration Awards. So it's something interesting. That's something, the weirdest kind of quickest comic I've ever worked on has gotten some interesting recognition. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's high praise, that's for sure.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm quite humbled by the whole thing. So
cool. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit now and talk a bit about your creative process. I wonder if you could talk about your tools used to create your book.
I work predominantly in Affinity Designer. I'm an illustrator by trade. So when I really started establishing myself as an illustrator, I really took to working on, this was just as computers were sort of becoming more commonplace in the art form. And for some reason, I just really took to Adobe Illustrator at the time. And so when I kind of refused to give Adobe any of my money monthly, that I found out, I was starting to work on an iPad too, that I found out about Affinity. I've kind of not gone back. I mean, I periodically use Adobe for things that I can't do in Affinity, but Affinity just keeps getting better and is very user-friendly, still well-priced. I think even the newest model is free, which is nice, and just really kind of a fun tool. It's an interesting, different tool to use for comics. Like, yeah, I hear, so many people are either, if they're using digital, it seems that they're using Procreate, and I could never really grasp a lot of that stuff. Like something with vector just really kind of really works for me. And it's, even though it's very, very labor intensive in some ways, like, a lot of my stuff takes forever to make because it's, a lot of little fine tunings with vectors and the brushes I use and stuff like that. I always love the effect in the end. I'm just always happy with how things turn out. Yeah, it's kind of made, my comics kind of stand out a little, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that program. Can you talk about who makes it and where you got it from?
Yeah, it's company Affinity. They're owned by Canva now, and that's kind of hopefully doesn't lead to some sort of like decline in quality. But it's a UK-based company, and they were creators themselves. They set out to make a user-friendly, affordable alternative to Adobe, which at the time was really, had such a monopoly. And I think a lot of designers and illustrators and digital creatives were really getting sick of paying, I don't know what the cost is for a subscription a month to use a thing that, was kind of also giving them diminishing returns. And so I found out about it when it was the only sort of available program when I started using an iPad, and for its kind of user-friendly, creator-friendly mandate. Something I hope to stick by. Hopefully being acquired by someone else doesn't warp it down the line, because it happens far too often. So
it does, yeah. Well, let's hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Well, we met up recently at the Montreal Comic Arts Festival, so I've got to ask you, how was that show for you?
It was great. Yeah, it was my first time doing it. It was very long, very exhausting. Like 3 days can be a lot, but I think it was interesting because the Sunday was definitely, for a lot of us, it was our best day, because I think a lot of people who were coming by on prior days were just kind of like checking things out and then coming on the Sunday to buy, or they finally made it because it was so much real estate to cover if you're going from one end of St. Denis to the other. I met a lot of really nice new people. I got to hang out with some people from Toronto that I hadn't really hung out with, and I would definitely do it again. Yeah. As much of an endurance test that 3 long, especially the Saturday, like the 3 long days can be, it's kind of cool to be out on the street. And I'm glad the weather largely cooperated and wasn't a repeat of last year, because I kept hearing everybody's horror stories of the 2025 event and the deluge of rain they had to deal with. So, it was great fun. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. And
yeah.
I also understand you're going to be exhibiting at the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So I got to ask you, what are you looking forward to most at that event?
I confess I haven't really kept up with who's there. I've sort of just been caught up in my own thing, but I've seen the new Hamish Steele book. Looks really nice. And I think there's a few people who I met at MCAF are going to be there. And I'm good friends with Frances Lee, who you interviewed a while back, and it's her first TCAF. So I'm just kind of excited to see how that goes for her. And the fact that her first TCAF is with such a nicely done, well-published book. I hope she does really well at that. So, yeah, I guess closer to the date, I'll have to really sort of scope out what's going on. Hopefully I get a chance to tear myself away from my table to check some stuff out.
Hopefully, yeah.
It's kind of good in some senses to not make too many plans too soon, because sometimes you just never leave your table.
Yeah, it's always a surprise. You get to see someone, you turn around like, hey, I know you, and I don't know you. Let's talk about what you've got, right? So it's always an exciting thing.
Precisely. Like, oh yeah, you turn a corner and realize this person's there. Yeah, it's kind of sometimes nicer to go in blind, I think, sometimes too. Yeah,
never know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or just some really amazing discovery comes out of nowhere. That's like kind of the beauty of all these festivals. Yeah, it's just stuff really kind of catches you out of nowhere, and the beauty of discovery is still there. Yeah,
absolutely. So we've been talking about Softserve and Nosferatu. So I've got to ask you, what is the next project that you're working on that you can talk about?
I was hoping to have a kind of a mini comic, like sort of featuring the two characters. I was hoping to have that done soon, but kind of, life and everything got in the way. I'm going to probably work on that with some upcoming downtime. And I have a few collaborations with potentially on the go with Corey McCallum, who's a writer I collaborated with a bunch in the past. We haven't collaborated in a while, but he reached out to me a little while back with an interesting story, sort of a really kind of dark memoir of his growing up. Can't really divulge too much details. It's still really in the infancy, but yeah, it seems interesting because the story and the ideas behind it are sort of in a lot of ways out of my comfort zone of mostly just absurdist kind of weirdo kids influenced comics, that it's kind of a bit darker, a bit more personal to him. So it'd be exciting to see how I interpret it, and kind of the illustrator in me, it's kind of, I love that kind of interpretive challenge. So hopefully that's another thing I can sort of start really sinking myself into. Yeah, and then just like a bunch of personal illustration projects I hope to work on in the quiet months of summer. So
sure.
Yeah. Oh,
now I was reading your bio, and you've got a lot of different types of creative sort of outlets, I guess you could say. I was reading that you've done illustrations, character design for video games, animation, event posters, logo, advertising, and of course, comic books. So with that in mind, what do you sort of gravitate towards the most that gives you the most satisfaction?
It's funny because, it's sort of, they're all sort of, like the personal projects, obviously, because, there's something that there's less of a mandate to it, and the downside of sometimes with the personal projects is you're your own worst critic. So it's hard to get over that kind of hump of or get out of your own head, so like without having, say, an editorial voice or an art director. It's kind of, the collaborative elements of commercial projects sometimes takes things in different directions that you don't expect. Sometimes it's sometimes corporately mandated. I love doing posters a lot. It's been a while since I've done any, but yeah, like those are always just kind of, once again, fun interpretations of, sometimes with band posters or something like that they're very open, less thematically connected. When I did posters for like the Review Cinema or something, like putting my own spin on a movie that they were showing or something like that was always just super fun and a nice little creative challenge, because how to sort of put your own spin on a movie in really minimalist fashion that my style is and stuff like that. Yeah, at the same time, I'm still sort of finding that perfect project, the forever search, I suppose.
Sure. Well, with everything that you have on the go today and in the future, where do you recommend that people go online to find out more about you?
My main website, which is shinypliers.com. I'm also on Instagram at shinypliers, ShinyPliers. You can find me at both of those. My website is currently getting redesigned, so hopefully that should be up soonish as well. And it looks, the person designing it is doing a great job. So I'm really anxious to get that kind of out too at the moment.
Thanks to Matthew for the chat. You can discover more about Matthew Daley online at shinypliers.com and on Instagram at shinypliers. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators about making comic books and graphic novels. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media platforms, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2026.